Hey there, so if you're watching this video, that means you probably have one of these teacher roll cards for using Pandemic in the classroom. Thank you so much for checking this out. It's been a passion project of mine for the past couple of years to really get out what I've been doing with the board game Pandemic in the classroom. And this past few years has made it even more relevant, I think. Love to share with you what I got going on. Let's get the screen going on. So just for some context, this is part of the CDC Science Ambassador Leadership Network series. I gave this presentation to the Science Ambassador cohort and wanted to share that with others as well. And then also, if you're just here for the roll card rules, then there's a link that you can click to the bottom as well and get straight to those things. So first off, a little bit of introduction for myself. My name is Aaron Morin-Dangier. I'm a STEAM instructor and curriculum specialist at Global Citizenship Experience Lab School in Chicago, Illinois. And I teach a public health course among a whole bunch of other ones: game design, rocketry, theater science, whole bunch of different things. But this is specifically for my public science course, public health course, and got contact information there as well. So first of all, Pandemic, if you're not super familiar with the game, this is a game where diseases are spreading across the globe, and you are part of a team that is trying to stop that spread and find cures in order to save the world. It's a cooperative game, which means that you play together as a team. This is not competitive where you're fighting against one another. This is everybody playing together, trying to win or also lose as a team. It's 2 to 4 players, ages 8 and up. All this according to the box. It says 45 minutes to play a game. In my experience, the way that I play this game takes a little bit longer, maybe an hour, hour and a half each play. But my team likes to talk through all of the choices that we make before moving on. But I could see how it could be done in 45 minutes. The objective of this game is to create cures. You trade in cards, you create cures, and you stop the spread of disease. And in this game, there are many ways to lose. There is only one way to win. And that is to find cures for all of the diseases. The play, just a typical round of play, looks like this. You can move around on the board, you can move from city to city, traveling around, you can treat cases as they pop up. You could trade cards with other players in order to find a cure. It takes multiple cards of the same color to find a cure for that disease. You're trying to avoid outbreaks with any cities that are connected. So if one city has too many disease cubes in it, then it'll spread to any other diseases that it has a connection to. Infections are going to happen. That's just a part of the game. The disease will be proliferating. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's just when and where. Those are the big pieces here. And like I said before, finding 4 cures is how you win the game. It's the only way to win it. I've got a video that I'm going to show here, and that is of a slightly different version. This is Pandemic Hot Zone North America. So this is the first in a series of the Hot Zone games. It's essentially the exact same game, but it's on a smaller scale, both physically. It takes about half the size of the regular box, about half the price. It also has just all of the same the same mechanics condensed down into a smaller space. But anyway, this video is from my classroom. While we were doing remote learning, we sent a copy of this game to every student so they could play at home, they could play with their family. And then we also had a video call where I had everybody set up the same game and we were playing together. So this is just kind of one round of play. And that would be the end of your turn. But they would have 4 yellows for their next turn.
Yeah, we just need to get rid of a card, or can we trade our card back, right? Or
so you can't trade with them unless you have Atlanta, and I think that they're going to run out of turns anyway. No, you're going to have to just discard one of your cards.
Okay, that's fine. We don't need a blue right now.
True.
Should we do cardbacks?
I'm on board with that. Yeah, it seems effective.
Okay.
Right.
We'll do
Okay,
that.
so you're going to go 1, 2, and you're in Atlanta. For 3, you're going to pull Graham and Abby, right?
Yeah.
And then 4, you're going to give them this.
Which card is it?
It's Havana.
This is Havana.
Havana. Okay, got it.
And so Graham and Abby, you're going to need to discard 1. You have
New
Obviously, it's
York.
not going to be one of the yellow ones.
New York.
New
New York, Indianapolis, and LA.
New York.
New York City?
Yes.
Awesome.
So we'll discard that down here.
Effective. Awesome.
Cool.
And there we go. So hopefully nothing bad happens. Please, gosh.
I swear, if we get another.
It's gonna be our rotten luck, and then like, yes, epidemic.
Oh god.
Every
You're dead.
time!
All right, so we're going to draw here.
Mhm.
Kaylee and Dex, you have Chicago.
Woo.
Hey!
Very nice.
Hometown.
And you have a new event called Borrowed Time. This says the current player can do 2 extra actions.
Nice.
Oh,
Yo.
that's a worthy action card.
All right, so you got 2 of those. And then we've got 3 up here. So we'll do Denver,
No.
Dallas, and New York.
Oh, how nice.
Denver, Dallas, and New York. And we made it. Good job.
One person coughed and another person in New York.
All right, Maggie and Noel. All right, so like I said, that's just a one round of play. You can see the students interacting with one another. You can see that they're making connections with lots of different things that are going on. And I want to show you how I use this game in my classroom. So this is just a case study. Some of this comes from Pandemic Hot Zone. That's the smaller version. Some of these examples come from the regular Pandemic board game. I haven't used any of the expansions in my class yet, just these 2 versions. But I think that either one of these works really well, and there's lots of opportunity for either one of those, whichever you go with. So first of all, how do we use it? We use vocabulary in the class to talk about public health, and the way that they use the vocabulary in the game to describe an epidemic versus a pandemic, to describe what an outbreak is, it's very consistent with how the CDC defines these things. And so it's an easy transition to go in and out of the game, back and forth to classwork, because the definitions do match up. They're also talking about treating and curing and eradicating diseases, and all those things, like I said, match up really nicely with the established definitions in the science community. So it's an easy transition in and out of the game or to make connections. I also use the game to talk about discussions about reproductive rate for diseases. So that's R naught, the first one, and then also effective reproductive rate. That's based on other factors such as how disease spreads and what kind of control measures and vaccinations and things like that. This is an easy transition talking in, because we can talk about how a disease can spread in a particular city. And then once we find the cure, that changes things. So we can go from an R naught to an effective R naught. I also use this to introduce how vaccinations work. And then we talk about how they're implemented. And we also use it to find calculations for what percentage of people need to get vaccinated in order to reach herd immunity for any particular vaccine and its efficacy rate. So we will be using those same R naught concepts from before in order to kind of aim towards some bigger things. I'm a STEM teacher, so I get to dabble in the science and the math for this unit, and I think that is effective for doing both. Last thing here is the game requires strategic planning on that part, and we're going from the game into a project, and that project is a group project. It requires them to work together, and I think that it gives them a chance to kind of practice those skills before they get onto their action project. So I do these applied math concepts. We're solving inequalities, algebraic inequalities, where normally there's not a whole lot of context for them. We'll be looking at geometric sequences in the same thing, in the same context here. So if the effective R naught is less than 1, using a geometric sequence, we can raise that 1 to whatever power we want. If it's less than 1, it's going to die out. That disease is going to fade. If the effective R naught, if the reproductive rate of that disease is 1 new case for every case, then that disease is going to be stable in the community. If that effective R naught is greater than 1, then every case is going to provide more than 1 case. And just looking at how geometric sequences work, that 1 case is going to spread rapidly. We're going to have outbreaks. We're going to have a pandemic. They've got a formula here. So an effective R naught rate is essentially split up into two pieces. So I've got my unvaccinated crew here, their percentage times the R naught of the disease, because we haven't done anything to it. That's the portion that's unvaccinated. We can also take the vaccinated portion. So this is that same R naught, it's the same disease. We have the percentage of group that is vaccinated. And then I call this a vaccine inefficiency rate, as the efficacy rate subtracted from 100%. That's the percent that it's not efficient, and the percentage that it doesn't work for. But by combining these two, we can get an effective R naught for that particular disease in a particular space with a particular vaccination rate. And I use this to set up models of, well, what would it be like for using these vaccines? In years past, we've done, various flu vaccinations, but whenever it came up that we had multiple competing vaccinations in the US, we looked at, well, what if a bunch of people got Moderna? What if a bunch of people got Pfizer? What if a bunch of people got Johnson & Johnson? Kind of mix and match to see what it would take. What percentage of people would have to get Johnson & Johnson in order for us to reach herd immunity? What percentage would have to get Moderna? And so it became much more real, especially connected to the news that we were getting. So it gave them a reason to learn how to do these math problems, which I think is just fantastic. The last way that I use this in my class is as a summative assessment. So this is like a take-home test, especially in remote learning. Memorizing numbers and writing it down is difficult to measure, but also it doesn't mean a whole lot because the resources are available are quite different. So instead, I give them essentially what's take-home test. So they play the game, play multiple times, play it in class, play it with me, and then play it at home, with their family or friends. And then I give them some prompts and I ask them to respond to them. So I'm just going to walk through those real quick. This is the take-home test that they have for this unit. So the first thing I do is I have them pick a mechanic from the game and have them tell me how it matches what we're doing in class, what we're learning about in class. So find something that just is an example of real life and explain those connections. I see a ton of them. That's why I made this this video for you. But I want the students to be making those connections as well. And so I give them pretty carte blanche to find those and tell me about it. Another question I ask is that, they've been taking these strategies in the game, ways that they're protecting their world in the game. I ask them what kind of strategies that they're doing as an individual to protect their home or their class or their neighborhood or whatever their world is in real life. What actions are they doing that can ensure the safety of others? And so getting them to make a connection between the decisions that they're making in the game and how that relates to the decisions that they're making in their real life and outside of the classroom. Third question is I have them pick a role. We'll be looking at the roles in just a little bit, but I have them pick a role and tell me how the special abilities that are on that role card relate to what this person does in their life. So they have to do a little bit of STEM career research in order to come up with something here. And then they're also making a connection between, well, what does the game mechanic do? And what does this person do in real life? And how are those connected? I really like how this question comes up. There's a lot of interesting answers. Next question here is it's a cooperative game. So I asked them, all right, if you have a cooperative game, then everybody wins or everybody loses. Would this game be different if it was a competitive game? So if it was everybody playing against one another, what would that mean in the game? And also, what would that mean in real life if we were being competitive whenever we're looking at public health? And then the last thing I've got here is an article by Matt Leacock, who's the creator of Pandemic. He wrote an article for the New York Times in very early lockdown, and it was talking about, here's the game. He made Pandemic, and people are using it and talking about just general strategy for working together in the game and how that was something that we were seeing was going to be necessary in real life. I have my students look back on this with some hindsight and say, well, all right, well, this was very early in lockdown. With a year's able to reflect on it, how does the article hold up? How does that perspective hold up? What is still true about it? What things do you question? How would you respond to the game creator looking back, after a year spent in lockdown? And I get some interesting answers there. I know that there are lots of other questions you could be asking. This is how it plays out with the curriculum that I'm teaching. There are also things that I haven't done in my classes or haven't done in my classes this year that I think are absolutely worth exploring. So I want to look at some of those. Some of these are even cross-discipline. So if you have a teacher that's not in the STEM world, these can bridge those gaps, which is kind of cool. So every disease in the game, and so this top picture is a screenshot of the board, just a little zoomed in space. But each one of those drawings of diseases is based on a real disease. So we've got variola, where we get smallpox. Each one of these is the scientific name for the virus or the bacteria, and then beneath is the disease that you would get from it. So each one of these is based on a real thing. And so if you're doing microbiology or cellular structure or anything like that, then I think this could be a really interesting way to kind of ease into how cells or microorganisms look. The whole board itself is a map. And so, you get this world map. There's not every country is represented on it, but a lot of them are. A lot of countries that are significant in terms of historical epidemics or pandemics. So if you were to go back in time, look at, these other blips that we've had, you'll find a lot of those on the map. We could also follow the development of medical technology. You could look at, where was the germ theory developed? When was that? Where did we start doing vaccinations? Where did we start dealing with cowpox and how that affects smallpox? You could even look at access to clean water or sanitation. All three of these are directly related to sustainable development goals by the United Nations. So if you were trying to give your students some way to make some real world connections, you could go look at the SDGs. It's on the UN website, and make some connections to what people are trying to do in the world today and how that shows up geographically and geoeconomically. These are the role cards that I was talking about. So the base game of Pandemic, the regular version, has 7 roles. Pandemic Hot Zone has just 4 roles, but there are going to be new ones as new hot zones come out. But we've got a list here, and it's a pretty expansive list of people who work in the public health sphere. They do lots of different things. And so what I would see this as is it's the opportunity for role play. Everybody pick one of these and maybe write from your own perspective or act something out in your perspective. Create a game plan for your role. We've got career day opportunities. If you have somebody who's coming in who can talk about what it's like to be an epidemiologist, then you can make a connection with something they did in the game. And then I'm going to put a link up here as well. The CDC has a program where you can connect with them and have somebody from the CDC come into your classroom in advance notice. And that's a really awesome program. And so why not bring in somebody who does this in real life? This is somebody's job. It's a game that we're playing. This is what somebody does in their day-to-day job. And why not be able to talk to them about it? I think it's really cool to expose people to STEM careers, and why not do that through a game? There's lots of writing opportunities. A previous project that I've done was looking at historical diseases. So this is pre-COVID times. In the public health class, we looked at find a historical disease and think about what it would be like to report on that. Now that project has changed because of our recent context, but in this project, I had people do research skills. They were looking at specific types of writing, journalistic writing. I had them interview somebody, like what would you do if you had to make some adjustments? And I think that in modern times, that interview could even be more relevant. What were actions that you took during COVID to protect your business or to protect your house or to protect your whatever it happens to be, somebody in your home that is immunocompromised maybe. I also have some examples here. You can click through and see a couple of different projects that students did. If you are interested in knowing what they were supposed to be doing, what that grading rubric looks like, just email me. I'd love to share that with you so you can get an idea of what they were asked to do and then how that shows up. Social emotional learning is big in certain parts of the world, certain parts of education. So if that's your thing, you've got a ton of things that you could be working on here. There's a lot of soft skills that are promoted by cooperative games in general, but specifically this one. So communication, working with courtesy, being flexible. This game has a lot of twists and turns where you're going to have to adjust on the fly. It's good for practicing these types of skills where it doesn't matter a whole lot. This is a real safe space, a playground to work through those types of things. Teamwork is a big one. Resilience. Just being able to know that it's not always going to work out. The win rate for pandemic, I think, is somewhere in the 30-ish% of the time people win. And so knowing that, a good chunk of your students are going to lose the game the first time they play it, I think can be a really valuable experience for them as well. Show them what it means to lose, but also to move forward, knowing what you did well, reflecting, things like that. There are a few things that I think you should know before you put this game into your classroom. So just a couple of things. It's going to be difficult the first time you play because there are a lot of rules. The regular pandemic game has, I think, a 12-page rule book, 12 or so page rule book. There's a lot of rules in it. None of them are particularly difficult. It's just you have to know them before you get to it. What I would do, and what I do with my students now, is I send them a video. I say, watch this before you come to class tomorrow. And that's their homework, kind of a flipped classroom model. Do the video thing at home, come class, we're going to put it into practice. I also go through and do a walkthrough of a move or two, a couple of rounds with my students before they ever play. So I'm in a position where I can gather all of my students around a big table, or virtually, have them all in a call and see how it plays out, ask them what they might want to do, and just make sure that we're ticking all the right things. But because there are a lot of rules, it's going to take a little bit longer, and it's going to be a little bit tougher. Just be prepared for that. It's a long game every time. It's a long format game, maybe not like Gloomhaven or something like that, but it is a long game. Box says 45 minutes. In my experience, you're probably going to take an hour or more to play Pandemic, unless you lose quickly, which does happen from time to time. Pandemic Hot Zone has 30 minutes on the box. My experience has been a little bit closer to 45 minutes, but I think even if you had a relatively small class time, just like a 7-class period day or something like that, you could fit in a Pandemic Hot Zone game, including setup and breakdown. So maybe recommending on that. Couple things that I would recommend. There is an app. It's available for Android and for iOS. If you have tablets in your classroom or something like that, use the app, because it won't let you do things that are against the rules. And so it makes it a little bit easier to push things along. It's also relatively cheap. And then Hot Zone, smaller games, there are fewer things that you can do. It just condenses everything down. It's all the same mechanics. Both of these are clickable links, and they are links to the print and play. So Pandemic Hot Zone North America was released early on in lockdown. Hot Zone Europe is going to be released about a week or two from now. I think it's maybe early August whenever it's releasing or something like that. But both of those Z-Man games has released a print and play. So if you click on those, it's a PDF, you print it out, it's the board, it's the cards, it's the rules, it's everything you need except for like the little pieces. And so you can read your board game closet, or find some pennies, or wad up little pieces of paper, whatever you've got going on. I'm sure you can find something to make it work, but those are free. So if cost is a thing, then also that's a thing that you can work with. I think this is a fair question of, is this game an introduction or is it a conclusion? Is this a thing where you play the game first with the students and then you go talk about the content? Or is it the thing where you talk about the content and then you play the game? For me, I've landed on this being kind of the wrap-up exercise for thinking about the course. So we go through a lot of material, we play the game, and as we play the game, I'm asking the students, well, what connections are you making here? I think that if you did it the other way around, you could still have those conversations. You could say, hey, we're learning about this thing. How did that show up in the game? But I know how I like to do it. I recommend doing it at the end, but it could work either way. I've done it both. I just have my preference. Last thing I want to say on this is that students might not always remember vocabulary from science class. They might not always remember the lessons that you teach them in class, but they will remember playing a game. And I think that they remember the big things that you take away from them. So I've got a few of those that I want to walk through. I know that you could read. I'm not going to read everything to you, but I'm going to hit the highlights here, okay? So these are reflections from my students. Some of these are coming from that take-home test that I was telling you about. Some of this was just like an end-of-term reflection, thinking about, what was it that stood out to you over the course? And the game comes up pretty regularly. Some of these are just conversations that I've had with my students. But here's what they're saying. So I've got this student who says that there's no winning the game without teamwork, and this is like how we're not going to end the pandemic in real life without global cooperation. To me, I'm so glad that they made that connection because it is true, and I hope that they take that with them. I got another student that was saying that the strategy to keep outbreaks from happening was to limit the chances of it happening. And so very similarly, we're making decisions about our own health, we're making decisions about our own behavior in order to limit chances of outbreaks. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's just when, where, and how can we control it. I'm so glad that they're latching onto that sort of thing. I got a student here who is saying that the game is reinforcing that we do the equations, we do the work, we get the solution, but then we have to execute it. In the game, if you have a strategy, but you don't pull it off, then it doesn't matter. The execution is just as important as the strategy there. I had a student who was looking at the roles, and they were thinking about, you know, what is it like in the medical industry? So this particular student is just, you know, thinking about what different people do in real life, and how it's not just, oh, this is a public health you know, person, and they do one thing, but there's a lot of different people that have to come together to make that happen. I also had a student who chose to do an independent study, who was thinking about, you know, what kind of career options are out there. And so part of her independent study was just finding some things that she was interested in. After playing this game, she said, you know what, epidemiology is a really interesting thing. I'm gonna track down and speak to an epidemiologist, because I didn't even know that was a career, and I would love to know more about it. So the fact that they're interested in some things that are going on really got me just up there. This one showed up, and this is what I really love to see, is students saying, this is exactly like this. This is like how this. Whenever the students are making those connections, that's exactly what I want them to be doing. That's why we play the games, because the game is like life in some way. And if they can make those connections for themselves, then they've done all the work for me. I've just been playing a game with them in class, and they're teaching themselves, which is, I think, exactly what we want them to do. And then this is the almost last one. I had a student who was thinking about the game in terms of game design. And they said, you know, here's the thing we learned in class that doesn't show up in the game, but I would really like to include this mechanic. And so they were taking something that they had already learned content-wise and trying to shoehorn it into the game in a really cool way. So I think that that's really interesting, that they're thinking about what they know and then how to use the game to teach other people what they know. So that was a really cool moment for me. Lastly, I think this is the biggest one. This is one of the biggest reasons why I do it, is because I enjoyed the game, because I felt the experience. The game makes you panic a little bit whenever a disease is getting out of control. The game makes you feel really excited whenever you find a cure. And I think that those are experiences that we've had in the past couple of years. You know, whenever we had breakthroughs in vaccines, and whenever they tested and were effective, those are real life experiences that are replicated in the game really well. So if I can give them a safe space to feel those sorts of things, then I'm going to provide them with that for sure. I want to thank you for checking out this presentation. If you ever want to see this slideshow again, you've got the bit.ly here, you can check it out. My contact information, I would love to know how you're using Pandemic in your class. If you are trying something different with it, then let me know. I'm super excited about A, the game, about B, using games in classes, and would also love to know what other people are doing with it. So reach out, talk to me, let me know what's going on. And then lastly, you know, we've got this teacher roll card. My friends and I worked on this and play tested it for a long time to try to make sure that the balance was right. The slideshow is going to walk you through the rules and how to play it. And just want to thank everybody that helped me work on these. We had printing donated. The graphic design was one of my friends, and playtesting was my game group. Couldn't have done it without them. I appreciate y'all more than you know. That's everything that I've got going on here. I would love to know if you're going to be using this in class. So again, Pandemic, full-on board game, Pandemic Hot Zone, smaller version, all the same stuff, but really great ways to engage your students with all of the reality that they're facing with public health in a space that's a little bit less nerve-wracking than sometimes the news is. Thanks so much for checking this out. I appreciate it.